An architectural wonder, historical landmark, and one of the most haunted places in Northern California. The Winchester Mystery House has captivated visitors for decades. At 24,000 square feet, the 160-room Victorian mansion has 10,000 windows, 2,000 doors, 52 skylights, 17 chimneys, 13 bathrooms, 6 kitchens, and 47 stairways. When it was finished in 1923, the build cost $5 million. Today, that would amount to over $70 million. The construction began in 1886 but lasted until 1922, when an 8-room farmhouse transformed into one of the world's most unusual houses. But those stats aren't the most interesting facts about this house. They are just one part of a fascinating story that includes psychics, ghosts, doors to nowhere, and unanswered questions. When famed magician Houdini visited the mansion, he advised the owners to market the house as the Winchester Mystery House, and so a commercial destination was born. It was even one of the inspirations for author Shirley Jackson when she wrote her classic novel The Haunting of Hill House all the way back in 1959. So, why was the Winchester Mansion built? What was the thought process behind the bizarre design plans? Welcome to Midnight Tales with Mythos. I am Mythos, and in this series we're going to dive into the history and the haunted stories of the world's most famous haunted locations. So, who is the mastermind behind this bizarre build? Sarah Lockwood Pardee married into the Winchester family in 1862. When she became the wife of William Ward Winchester. He was the second owner of the Winchester Repeating Arms Company, maker of the famed Winchester rifle, aka the gun that won the West. The couple lived in New Haven, Connecticut, and had one daughter named Annie. But sadly, Annie passed away a month after she was born in the summer of 1866. The couple reportedly retreated from society after the death of their daughter, with Sarah remaining secluded for nearly a year. In 1881, Sarah's husband William passed away from tuberculosis. A year earlier, she lost her mother, and a few months before William's death, his father died as well. Between all of these horrible deaths in the family, Sarah just became lost and distraught. She took a trip to visit the seashore and then spent some time in Europe. At this time, she was still located on the East Coast. When her husband, William Winchester, died, he left Sarah a small fortune. Before he died, he made out bank drafts to Sarah totaling $7,500 and made her the executrix of his will. In the wake of his death, she controlled the Winchester Repeating Arms Company shares, valued at nearly $80,000 at the time. Between 1880 and 1885, Sarah earned dividends from the stock, which averaged about $8,000 annually. When William's mother died, Sarah inherited even more from the Winchester fortune, including 2,000 shares of Winchester Repeating Arms Company's stock with a net worth of $400 per share. At one point, Sarah Winchester was the 4th richest woman in America. Around this time, a doctor recommended Sarah move to a warmer climate to help with her worsening arthritis. So, Sarah Winchester picked up her East Coast life and moved to California. In 1886, Sarah purchased a house from a man named John Hamm. The house was located on a 45-acre ranch in the Santa Clara Valley. She named the property Lanada Villa. After moving to California, her 2 sisters followed her, setting up lives in the Greater Bay Area. Sarah's initial plan was to build a giant house to accommodate her family, but those plans never came to fruition due to the constant construction the house was undergoing. The only family member to move into the house with Sarah was her niece, Maria Merriman, who moved in when she was 21 years old in 1890. Within the first 6 months of construction, the house grew from 8 rooms to 26 rooms. Sarah was deeply involved with the design of the house. She attended expositions that inspired the interior and exterior designs. She hired multiple architects to help her complete her vision, but she was never satisfied with their work, and so they never stuck around. Instead, she ran the construction process herself, seeking the advice of the carpenters she hired. Instead of developing an entire plan, she worked on a room-by-room basis. If a room didn't turn out how she wanted, she would tear it down and begin again on the construction. As you can imagine, this method isn't the most efficient or practical when it comes to building a house. In some cases, rooms would be left abandoned for long periods of time before she would return to work on them again. As time went on, the house began to resemble a rambling maze. After 1896, Sarah added stories to parts of the home. Some sections of the mansion contained 5 stories with 1 tower reaching 7 stories high. According to sanjose News, the tower was rebuilt 16 times before she was satisfied with the build and design of it. In a letter dated June 11th, 1898, addressed to a Jenny Bennett, Sarah Winchester discussed the tumultuous experience of working on her home. The letter reads, "I am constantly having to make upheaval for some reason. For instance, my upper hall, which leads to the sleeping apartment, was rendered so unexpectedly dark by a little addition that after a number of people had missed their footing on the stairs, I decided that safety demanded something to be done so. Over a year ago, I took out a wall and put in a skylight. Then I had to have plastering done, and as that could not be well done in the heat which succeeded, I had to wait for cooler weather. Then I became rather worn and tired out and dismissed all the workmen to take such rest as I might through the winter. In 1906, a devastating earthquake struck San Francisco. Like many of the homes in the Bay Area, the Winchester mansion was damaged. The 7-story tower, the 3rd and 4th floor additions, and most of the home's chimney collapsed. In addition, other damage include destroyed plaster, wood and tile work, as well as busted pipes. The debris was cleared, but no further building occurred. Only essential repairs in the wake of the earthquake. Because construction did not continue, 2nd-story doors led to nowhere since the balconies were now gone, and staircases led up to a ceiling now that the upper level no longer existed. The only thing that was added after the quake was an elevator in 1916. Because the house abruptly stopped construction, leaving the layout plans perplexing, rumours circulated around Sarah Winchester and her life inside her home. Local newspapers labelled her as a madwoman.
Sarah Winchester's mind is as chaotic as the house itself. We're worried about her sanity, Dr. Price.
The house contained doors that led to 12-foot drops and doors that opened to rooms with no floors. It's as if the house was designed to be one giant puzzle. Now, no one really knows the method behind her madness, or even if she was mad at all. What compelled Sarah to keep construction going on a house for decades without a clear plan? What caused her to redo and rebuild so many aspects of the house over and over again? All of the loss in Sarah's life coincided with the rise of spiritualism, a movement in the 19th and 20th century characterized by a growing interest in mediums, seances, and the concept of communicating with the dead. Nowadays, the legend of the house is steeped in ghost stories and lore of Sarah Winchester communicating with the dead. Stories say she was obsessed with the occult and the afterlife, conducting seances in her home nearly every night. One story goes that Sarah Winchester was convinced that the people killed by her husband's rifle would come back from the dead and haunt her.
I feel their presence, their energy. Their unfinished business has brought them here.
A medium told her that if construction was done on her home continuously, noise from the sawing of the wood and pounding of the nails would keep the spirits away. One of the reasons she may have built a seance room was to consult with spirits to help her create a space that would leave any menacing ghosts lost and confused. That's why so many of the construction design choices in the house make little to no sense. According to the official Winchester Mystery House website, what many consider to be the heart of the mansion, the seance room, was once the very private and off-limits room to everyone but Sarah Winchester herself. Legends say that the nearby residents heard the bell tower at midnight and again at 2 a.m. Was this to summon spirits to communicate with them and then release them? There is one entrance to this room and 3 exits. One exit through the entrance door, another leads to an 8-foot drop into the kitchen below, and the final is a one-way door that resembles a secret passageway. You'll have to come and see for yourself what lies on the other side. But a seance room isn't the only spooky aspect of the mystery mansion. A few legends include a hall of fires, a room that is completely sealed, and a few ghost sightings. Some employees who worked at the mansion for Sarah Winchester are believed to have stayed on after their deaths. According to witnesses, footsteps can be heard shuffling to and from Sarah's room. Could this be her servants? Some visitors have seen an apparition of a person with black hair pushing a wheelbarrow. In the Hall of Fires, named for its many fireplaces, a present-day worker at the mansion claimed to have had a paranormal experience. Prior to the mansion opening for tours one day, the worker was on a ladder and felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned and looked, but no one was there, of course. The worker went back to her, but felt what seemed like a hand pressing against his back. He was still the only one in the room. Without missing a beat, the worker immediately left the room, afraid of meeting a ghost face to face. As mentioned earlier, the 1906 earthquake that destroyed San Francisco also caused serious damage to the Winchester house. Although there are conflicting claims to Sarah's whereabouts the day of the earthquake. One legend recalls her being inside the house all alone when the earthquake struck. Not just that, she became trapped in a room until her workers were able to set her free. The experience left her deeply shaken, and so she had the room sealed. The room stayed that way for decades until the room was finally opened and added to tours of the house. One of those tours, a guide gathered participants in the room to explain the history and point out the objects found inside more than 100 years after being sealed. The guide heard a loud sigh in the hallway and went outside to bring in the straggler, but she didn't see any tourists in the hallway. She only saw a small ghostly form gliding around the corner. The guide quickly looked around but didn't see anyone, despite hearing another sigh. Visitors to the Winchester Mystery House also report taking photos with strange shapes in the windows. The house's own public relations coordinator, Tim O'Day, reported that he took several photos of the mansion in 2015. When he downloaded the photos, he deleted what he didn't need, but he noticed something in one of the windows. The figure is a cloudy white form that looks out of place. Some reports claim that Sarah was also obsessed with the number 13, that she even built doors, windows and rooms in sets of 13. The superstition around that number has led many to believe it is a contributing factor to the strange occurrences happening inside the house. But like many of the stories surrounding this mystery house, the truth is unknown. Historians still have no idea why the house was built the way it was. There are no definitive accounts of Sarah making these decisions. We only have the plans, which look as though the house was built on a room-by-room basis. As we know, Sarah built and rebuilt several sections of the house. The mystery lies with the reasoning behind her design and construction obsession. Following Sarah's death from congestive heart failure on September 5th, 1922, at the age of 82, the already famous home was sold and reopened soon afterward as a roadside attraction. It was added to the National Register of Historic Places and designated a California historical landmark in 1974. Since then, the famous Winchester House has become one of the the most popular tourist destinations in San Jose, with people visiting from all over the world to tour the bizarre layout and see for themselves just how crazy the building actually is. One day I hope to get there myself. In 2010, a history teacher, Mary Jo Ignofo, published Captive of the Labyrinth, Sarah L. Winchester, heiress to the rifle fortune. This book refuted much of the legends and stories that circle Sarah Winchester and her house. This includes the rumour that she was influenced by a medium to build a non-stop pace to appease angry ghosts. The author found correspondence in which Sarah specifically mentioned that she had stopped construction for periods, as mentioned earlier in this episode. The most plausible explanation for some of the house's oddities involves the rebuilding process after the 1906 earthquake. Perhaps Sarah Winchester simply had some passageways sealed off, resulting in the doors and stairways that went to nowhere. But that doesn't explain the way the ghostly sightings that have haunted guests for all of these years. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Midnight Tales with Mythos. I hope you had fun and maybe learned something about this topic and the house along the way. If you aren't subscribed to the channel, guys, please make sure you stick around and hit that subscribe button. It's absolutely free, and I will see you in the next one.